Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. Today's episode is with American Council of Engineering Companies of Colorado, better known as ACEC Colorado, and it is brought to you by Atkins, a member of the SNC-Lavalin Group, and Move Colorado. So we are on the Connect and Collaborate network, and we're going to get started with Let's Go Colorado. I have in studio with me Brad Doyle. He's the project director for Atkins, which is an SNC-Lavalin group, as well as Carla Perez. She is president of Move Colorado, and also Joe Kiely. He is the vice president of operations with Ports to Plains Alliance and also a board member of Move Colorado. So first of all, how are all of you doing today?
Wonderful.
Well,
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Those are great answers. Happy to hear on this little bit of chilly afternoon on a Monday. But we are talking transportation today. One of our favorite topics in Colorado, I think, across the state, is something that we all hear a lot about. And if you don't hear about it, you're usually in traffic complaining about it yourself. So, Brad, I would love to get started with you. Let's talk about these transportation issues, but also give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up with Atkins.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
So, we're here today with American Council of Engineering Companies of Colorado to talk about what is going on with our transportation network. I am a project director with Atkins. It's an SNC-Lavalin Group business. And, my involvement in this has just been helping out over a number of years through organizations such as Move Colorado, just continuing to talk about the issues that are facing transportation, the state of our infrastructure, the state of the funding for it, and that. And so it's just been an ongoing conversation for a number of years about what are we going to do about this. Colorado is really facing about $1 billion a year shortfall in funding for our transportation system. We have about a $9 billion backlog in our network of projects that need to be completed. And, every year that goes by, we just fall a little bit further behind. And that's just at the state system. At the local level, it's a $3 billion shortfall that we have right now, $3 billion project list. And, they're foregoing or not doing about $750 million in maintenance every year. So, with a growing population, it's an increasing pressure on our roads and our road network across the state. And so, it's just something that the group has been wanting to raise up as an issue, and we're here today. We're finally ready to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this before we move on a little bit. I think one of the things that I thought a lot of voters thought would fix this was when we legalized marijuana. They thought a lot of the funding would go to transportation, right? And while some of it does, there's not a whole lot that goes into the transportation, right? No, a lot of it goes back more into the education aspect, right?
Correct.
There wasn't nearly as much as we thought we would get out of marijuana.
Right. I mean, and really, that tax goes into the general fund and then is redistributed through various channels and that. Last year we were able to get a little bit of money out of the general fund, but it's kind of been a one-time shot this year, next year. But after that, there's no stream of revenue. It's not reliable. And that's something that really our transportation infrastructure relies on as we think about these big projects that we need to undertake. We need a multi-year, continuous, guaranteed stream in order to fund projects like you see starting up around us. Because without it, they can't get done. There's not the planning and that goes into these things. It just takes too long to do them in a short time period.
Absolutely. So we do have a solution, though, that we have proposed, and that is Proposition 110. Do you want to give me a little bit of a layout of 110, please?
Yep, absolutely. So what we're talking about is Proposition 110. We're asking all of our voters to vote yes on 110. What it will do is raise a sale tax. It'll be 6 cents on a $10 purchase. It's kind of the easy way to think about that. It is that money will then be split up into various pots. One of those is the 45% will go to CDOT that will fund a project list that CDOT has worked with many different planning areas and planning regions, and Joe's going to talk about that here in a minute. 45% of it will go into that project list. It will be used to bond for $6 billion worth of projects. So that original list of $9 billion, we're going to take care of about 2/3 of that list. That list was prioritized, and we'll take care of those priority projects off that list. 20% will go to cities, 20% to counties. That will follow a distribution formula that's already in use for other things under the Highway User Tax Fund. So 20% to cities, 20% to counties, that'll be used for advancing their capital improvements projects, so that they can go around their neighborhoods and continue to advance and to improve the state of our infrastructure. 15% will then finally be left for the Mobility Options Fund that will fund various types of public transportation, whether it's statewide transportation systems like what CDOT is operating with the busing system, or community systems to move people around their communities. Transit in a small community is a shuttle that gets people from home to healthcare or home to grocery stores and things like that.
Oh, cool.
So that's how it's going to be split up.
Yeah, I like that. Well, then, Joe, if you don't mind taking over a little bit here and expanding on that for me. Before we do that, give me a little bit of your background.
I spent 27 years working for the town of Lyman, and so I have a lot of local government experience. And I also work for Ports to Plains Alliance, which is a multi-state transportation advocacy organization, and we do a lot of advocacy for rural communities. And so through really back to 1991 when the gas tax was last changed, I've been involved with transportation planning in Colorado, where one of the questions that I get all the time is how were the projects selected for the state side of things? And it really began 2 years ago when CDOT began putting together its 10-year development plan. The plan was designed to identify priorities and needs for major investments on multimodal corridors over a 10-year time frame, so if there was an opportunity for new revenue, they'd know what the needs were. I, as a representative of Ports to Plains and for a long time of the town of Lyman, participated in the Eastern Colorado Transportation Planning Region, one of 11 rural planning regions around the state. And these 11 regions, along with the metropolitan planning organizations across the state, identified these basic needs. They put lists together for this is what's important to our region. That all went to CDOT, and they were combined into a statewide list. And then the State Transportation Advisory Committee that is made up of a representative from each of those 11 transportation planning regions and the metropolitan planning organizations made a recommendation about what projects should be included. And finally, the Transportation Commission, again representing statewide interest as the commissioners represent various regions of the state, made the final decision and what projects went into the 10-year plan. And so the projects that are on the ballot list for bonding came from that 10-year development plan. And so really it's been a statewide selection process from the beginning to the end. And so these are the statewide priorities. If something's not on there, it's because the local communities did not bring those forward.
Gotcha. And Carla, if you don't mind giving us a little bit more background here and your involvement as well as your background with Move Colorado.
Certainly. I'm president of Move Colorado, and I'm very excited to operate in that role given this critical year for conversation about transportation. I'm also working on the Let's Go Colorado campaign as the policy director, and part of the reason I do that is I've been in transportation for over 25 years, and I feel like I've spent my entire career talking about the need for more transportation funding. And let me get into a little bit why that is. Joe alluded to it a little bit before in the beginning of this conversation. We fund transportation primarily through gas tax. And that gas tax at the statewide level has not been raised since 1991. So we currently pay 22 cents per gallon of gas on towards transportation funding. We also pay an 18 cents on the federal level, but the conversation we're having today is really about that statewide piece. Neither one of those has been increased since the early 90s. So you can imagine that if you haven't increased your revenue stream for transportation since that period of time, it has a significant impact on your ability to maintain the system, much less grow it or improve it to deal with the pressures that we are facing. So one of the pressures we're facing, as everybody feels, I think, every day, is the growth in population. We've had significant growth in population in Colorado, and as a result of that, we have more people traveling on our roads. But in addition to that, as we look at transportation gas tax as a revenue stream, it really has its limitations since our vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient and have been for a while, which is great for you
Wonderful.
and me,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But it's not great when you're trying to fund a system based on that revenue stream. We can take that further in the sense of being able to talk about our vehicles are becoming more electric. Mm-hmm. And as we look towards electric vehicles, they're not paying any gas tax.
Right.
So the need to modernize the way we fund transportation becomes really important. And so the shift from a gas tax to a sales tax as proposed under Proposition 110, voting yes on 110 gives us that ability to shift away from a revenue stream that has become very antiquated in its ability to serve our needs in Colorado.
Absolutely. So this seems like a pretty fair solution if you're looking at it overall, right? This, in my opinion, I should say. I'm sure you guys are all excited for it and definite proponents for 110.
Well, we think it's fair because it gives the opportunity for everybody to be able to pay into the system. Mm-hmm. The gas tax is a user-based fee, right, or a way to be able to pay into it. But a lot of people don't use the system in the way that they used to. For example, you don't go out and drive as much as you used to because you have a lot of, or shop as much as you used to because you can have Amazon deliver to you, right? Well, Amazon's still using the roads, even though you aren't for that purchase. So we still need to be able to keep up our system, even though you're not necessarily using the system in the same way maybe you have in the past.
Well, and even if you are a pedestrian, right, you don't have any vehicles, you still need to find some way to invest in multimodal transportation, right? And so this can also take care of that because some of the funding will hit this multimodal transportation fund as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're looking at every traveler, pedestrian or otherwise, being able to partake. Bicycles,
scooters, all of them need to be able to have a good roadway system and a transit and a roadway system to operate on, freight, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if you think about our roads as a utility, we're spending about $69 a year in fuel tax that is going per user, per road user, that is going out to fund our transportation. $69 a year for a utility it's a very cheap utility.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflective in the state of that infrastructure is we're just not spending enough money on it. And by doing this, we modernize that and bring it up to a better standard.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree with you on that. So tell me a little bit more about the out-of-state visitors, right? So we know that we use our own roads, but this directly impacts our out-of-state visitors a little better, right? Yeah. Than the previous system.
It does, and it's deliberately designed to do that. We recognize that we have a number of visitors that come to Colorado each year. 86 million visitors came to Colorado last year. Not all of them are out of state because we do have many. We are sometimes visitors within our own state. We do staycations, right? And so we're part of that, part of those calculations. But what this enables us to do is to be able to capture the out-of-state community that's really coming in and enjoying Colorado and using our infrastructure system, our roadway system. And this is a fair share way for them to be able to participate as well. We will still be paying the tax, but so will they. And so it's a nicer way to be able to diversify that contribution into the needs of paying for the needs of the state.
Right. So again, I want to reiterate this actual percentage. So it's going from, state tax would go from 2.9% to about 3.52%, but that's really only 0.62% raise in your taxes. Can we talk a little bit about the 20 years? Are we going to revote in 20 years? Why pick 20 years for this to be a standard, is
there is a 20-year sunset on it.
Yes.
Part of the reason for that is, well, there's a number of reasons for that. One is it's a way of being able to help people understand that the tax that they are paying and the resources that are going into this will have an end. Right? People tend to feel a little better when they know this is not a forever tax, and it's true. We may want to look at something else 20 years from now. I won't be doing that.
You mean technology might change things?
Yes.
Just a little bit.
I may not be the one sitting here 20 years from now having that conversation with you, but it is something that probably will need to happen. It also ties back to the list of projects and being able to deliver those projects, as well as the bonding schedule, and being able to have time to have this revenue stream pay off those bonds over a 20-year period.
So it's more focused on making sure the projects that we need done, the $9 billion worth of projects, making sure that gets taken care of. And obviously, we will probably look at something a little more flexible next time. Maybe by then we'll have flying cars,
We could.
I'm still hoping for it.
Yep.
So again, let's talk about how local participants are involved with that. If you don't mind going over that for me, Joe.
The statewide system is really important. It creates corridors and allows goods and tourists and people from Colorado to move and travel, but every trip starts and ends on a local road.
Plain and simple.
Yep. We all left home this morning and we got on a local road. I'm one of the few. I live right on a state highway, but
The rest of us.
the rest of us all use those state roads. And so Proposition 110 recognizes the importance of those local roads through the local priority fund. And one of the things that I really like about the fund for the state transportation and the local transportation fund, and that is this doesn't go into the general fund. So the legislature does not have the ability to come in and say, oh, we're going to reallocate this to something else. It doesn't give them that choice.
Okay.
And so it creates new dollars dedicated to city and county transportation projects that are selected by those local elected officials. Under Proposition 110, counties will see about a 75% increase in their local transportation funding. As Brad pointed out,
I need you to say that again, louder for the people in the back. One more time for me, please.
75% increase in local transportation funding to counties.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't just a metro issue. This is statewide.
This is statewide. Cities and towns, it's about 120% increase in what they're currently getting from the gas tax. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge help to every city and county, and especially across the state in some of the smaller counties and such that just can't raise the amount of dollars needed to maintain their transportation system locally. And it's really flexible dollars. It can be used for roadways, sidewalk, bicycle pedestrian lanes and paths, transit programs, even operations for transit. And there really has never been a source of money for operations. Mm-hmm. Lyman, for example, has a transit bus that operates part of the year 2 days a week for 4 hours and part of the year 3 days a week. We have the bus, it sits there, they can't afford to find the money to pay the operator. They can decide to take a portion of this and expand those hours.
There you go. How lovely. And I think that's my favorite part of this bill is that the 20% for county and the 20% for city and towns going for local, and they can spend it on whatever they want transportation wise, whether that's getting a van maybe, right, for your...
Or a snowplow.
Yeah, or a snowplow. I didn't even think about it. So, you guys, you're opening my mind here. But that's the exciting thing, is that you're giving back the power to the local governments, right? Is that 40% really for everyone all over the state can take this money how they want to. And I love that you still have a little bit set aside just for the multimodal, right? And so that's a separate issue, but That's exciting stuff. We've got a few minutes. Yes, please.
That multimodal section, within that there's a local community grant program that will pay up to 50%. So a local community that wanted to do something multimodal, transit, bicycle, pedestrian paths, could apply for 50% of a project cost and use their local option dollars to pay for the rest of that, to match that.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome. So can you guys talk a little bit to me about the committee that you're looking at making for this? Do you mind going into a little bit of detail in these next few minutes?
We have a pretty broad-based coalition of supporters for this proposal, and a group that has been together for quite some time looking at this formula of distribution as well as the dollar amount and the revenue stream. So I think it's a group that is made up of businesses, chambers of commerce, and so forth. We've got unions, agricultural interests, bicycling community, associations statewide, and regional associations, environmental groups, elected officials with current and former. We have transit enthusiasts. We have the governor is supporting this, the mayor is supporting this, mayor of Denver is supporting this, and several mayors across the metropolitan area, as well as statewide county commissioners. It has been a pretty broad base of interests that have come forward in supporting this idea, and part of that is because we're all feeling the pressure associated with our systems, wherever part of the state you're in, whether it's a congested system or a deteriorating system, or you're just in need of alternatives to move people around. You want to expand those mobility choices, tourism interests that really speak to wanting to attract. We're so popular, for example, for cyclists, right? And so being able to make sure that our roads are in good shape for purposes of being able to meet the needs of our drivers, the vehicles and the trucks that are on them, but also for those other modes that use the system, as we were talking about earlier. Yeah. So it's been pretty straightforward in terms of building that coalition of support.
That is awesome. I need you guys to tell me where I can go to find more information about this.
So there are a number of websites out there that are now publishing and pushing this information out. So first, let's start with Move Colorado. That's an organization that we're all three representing and are members of as here today. So that is just simply movecolorado.org. Joe is the one who's maintaining that site for us and that. So any questions at all or anything, please check out that site. From there, it links to the Let's Go Colorado website. So if you want to look up that, that's the campaign's website. So it's letsgocolorado.com. Okay. Couldn't remember the dot on that one.
There's a few you got to be tricky on.
So letsgocolorado.com. The third site is CDOT's website for their project list. Again, you can get there from movecolorado.org, but together that's just Together We Go. So if you'll just look that up in your search engine, Together We Go. And then finally, ACEC Colorado, one of the sponsors and hosts of today's show, has information on their website. So that is acec-co.org.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Wonderful. I love that. We are going to be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. I want to hear more about this Proposition 110 when we get back. We'll get right into that, as well as some transportation and engineering solutions that we can think of here for transportation in Colorado. So stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Check out cobrt.com/radio-podcast for this show and more. We'll be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and today's episode is with the American Council of Engineering Companies of Colorado, and it is sponsored today by SNC-Lavalin and Move Colorado, and we are talking transportation. Once again, in studio with me, I have Brad Doyle. He's a project director for Atkins, which is also an SNC-Lavalin Group business, as well as Joe Kiely. He is with Ports to Plains Alliance and also a board member of Move Colorado. And we have the president of Move Colorado with us, Carla Perez. So thank you all again for joining me today. Fascinating conversation on transportation. I'm enjoying it. And just to reiterate once again for our audience here, we are talking Proposition 110, and that is looking at raising taxes just a little bit, right? We're talking 6 cents on $10. That is a little bit over 0.5% that they are wanting to raise taxes overall. So you're not going to feel that too hard right away. And again, I know we discussed this on the break. For items that are not taxed, food, agricultural items, things like that, we are not going to go tax those.
No, all the exemptions that are currently in place under statute for sales tax will remain in place. So you won't have sales tax on food, agricultural products, gas. We wouldn't do it again on gas. I mean, that would be crazy, right? To have sales tax and a gas tax, right, for the same purpose. Prescriptions are not subject to the sales tax. Okay. Things like that. Everything that's currently exempt remains exempt.
Wonderful, right? So we're not changing a whole lot of laws here. We're just adding a little bitty sales tax to get some more funding, desperate needed funding, might I add, for transportation. So the reason that we are talking about this too is because of real life engineering and other issues with transportation, right? We need a fix. So, Brad, if you don't mind going into some of those big topics for us and why it's so important to get this passed.
Sure. Every year that goes by, our roads continue to deteriorate. We are underfunding the entire system as a whole, and it's at the state level, at the city level, at the county level, across the board. It's being underfunded. So it's kind of like it's like owning a car. And I guess that's the best analogy to draw. So you buy a new car, it's nice when you it's like putting a new road down. It's a new car, you buy it, you need to do some maintenance on it, and every so often you have a major repair come up. And then eventually it's obsolete and you have to replace it. So we're going through all those same life cycles in our roads right now. And we're in some state of those life cycles with everything. And the thing is what we are doing is we are not doing some of those maintenance items. So we all know when you do not maintain your car, after a certain period of time, it breaks. And then the repair ends up getting very, very large, or you have to replace it. We have a lot of roads that, there's a lot of roads that we've had to make some very hard decisions to greatly reduce the level of maintenance that we are doing on them just because we can't afford to continue doing it. That means those roads are going to continue to deteriorate, and some of them are going to be past the point of being repairable, and then we'll be replacing them. So the further that we delay and don't take action, the worse those conditions get.
One of the things that I think is most interesting about transportation is we tend to take our systems for granted, right? We walk out the door and we assume that our transportation system is always, the roads are going to be there, the bridges are going to be there, and as long as they are there, we're fine. Well, we're not maintaining them, as Brad is suggesting, the way we would normally be if we were able to maintain a level of funding that is necessary to do that. So since we haven't increased the gas tax for so long, this shift to sales tax gives us that greater opportunity to make those investments again, because roads will and do deteriorate and bridges will fall down if we don't maintain and repair them. And I think part of what's happened, which is unfortunate in the way we operate here in Colorado, is we've gotten comfortable with the band-aided approach. So we band-aid our system in order to keep it functional, but we haven't actually modernized it and improved it to the level that meets our current population needs.
Well, you can't put a Band-Aid on a broken bone, right?
No.
It's not
advisable. You go in for a major repair.
And all of that comes at a cost to every person in the state of Colorado. Whether it's damage to their vehicle because of a pothole, or it's sitting in congestion, not being able to do something with your family, there are costs associated with that, air quality, all of that's affected by how we maintain our infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Well, and think about some of the detours in that, if an engineer goes out and finds a bridge that is in an unsafe condition, we have no choice but to close that bridge.
Period.
period.
Yeah, there's no workaround for that. You can't just take the other lane. It's the whole bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you close a road, and then you detour traffic around until that bridge can be fixed, which takes a while. So, deferring maintenance on these types of things is a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that. We've all seen it. We're already getting rerouted for certain projects right now, right? The Central 70 is starting to take off, and the I-25 gap is getting there as well.
And those bridges, the viaduct will be coming down, but if you were to go under the viaduct and actually look up underneath that bridge, you
I
can
choose
see.
not
Yeah,
to.
it's better not to know.
Carla, I have been under that bridge, and have
And you
looked
see
up.
the exposed rebar and the crumbling.
Right.
Concrete.
And that's not the only bridge in the state that looks like that, unfortunately.
Right.
So, it's a problem. But, engineers can really, so when we start thinking about what are we going to do to fix these solutions and that, we start looking at it, what's causing the problems and what is the need as we start defining what Joe talked about in the first part of the section, what needs to be done out there. We work with engineering and planning groups. We talk to the contractors. We talk about, what is the best solutions. We go out into the communities. What are their needs and try to understand that. So we try to bring these things full circle as we work up to what do we need to do in whatever state of repair we need to do for a road or bridge, or and whether it's just a routine maintenance improvement or whether it's a replacement and that, and because that happens, and we need to expand roads and that. So a lot of conversations go into figuring out what is the solution that needs to be done. And when we're all said and done with that, it's what do we need most to be able to go and do these things is funding. Mm-hmm. And it's back to that, sustainable funding that a vote yes on Proposition 110 brings for us is sustainable funding to go solve all those problems that we're facing when it comes to our road infrastructure.
How is that timeline looking? So if we do get this passed, we get a yes vote on 110, I would imagine that the funds aren't magically going to be there 1 month after we voted this in, right? What's the timeline look for when we can get that $9.4 billion back in our bank?
The sales tax would begin to be collected in January of 2019, and it would be collected and then deposited to the state treasurer, and then distributions within a month or so after that, right?
Okay, so it starts
it's just
right away.
Just the way the current sales tax process does. Because it's a long-term sustainable funding source for transportation, and we know that revenue stream will then be there for a 20-year period, the state can begin bonding against that, and they will start issuing bonds on a varied schedule in order to be able to start delivering these projects. And CDOT, for purposes of their list, those 107 projects, they've identified or they've committed to building all of those projects within a 10-year period. So that's a lot of activity, a lot of improvements that can be made in a very short period of time. Relatively speaking, transportation is not a fast game, which is it's something that I think is very challenging for all of us, especially when we're sitting in congestion. You want to have those immediate solutions, but in order to be able to make those changes, it does take time. Mm-hmm. But at least we'd be on the right path and we'd be moving in the right direction.
Well, and some of those projects, from a planning and design perspective, are already advancing. Some of those have already been teed up. These are discussions have been going on for a long time.
Right.
What we've never known is how are we going to fund this project.
And we should be specific about what some of those are.
Yeah. So some of the I-70 sections, Floyd Hill, for example, I-70 Floyd Hill, it's a project that Atkins is involved with. And we've been having conversations about that project.
There's I-25 North. There's some projects on I-25 South. We've got projects out in Grand Junction. We've got I-70 all the way through, right?
Yeah.
From one end to the other.
In eastern Colorado, from east of Lyman to Burlington and the Kansas border, much of that has never been rebuilt, and so a significant amount of dollars will go towards that. Truck reliever route in Lamar. Some dollars going to US 385 to expand that highway and make it safer, Highway 71. So again, these projects are all over the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that about as detailed as we can get on those? Okay. I don't want to put anyone under the bus.
We can keep going. I mean, there's
Oh, no.
everybody's got their favorite pet project that
Yes.
they are pet. Probably not. It's not fair to call it a pet project. Your pet peeve of your
yes.
congestion choke point that causes you difficulty in your commute or your weekend leisure travel every day or every weekend.
Well, my issue actually is I don't really have a problem with the interstates at all because I take surface streets to work, right? But more and more, because of the backup on the interstate, lots of people are taking surface streets now, and so I run into issues on MLK. And goodness, I don't get angry at work because I just yell at everyone on my way to work. I don't have an anger issue. Yeah, I do. Get it all out. It's wonderful.
Well, mine is I have family out in 2 different communities out on the Eastern Plains, and so it's either I-76 or I-70, and Joe, out in your neighborhood, I try to figure out where's the best place to drive, where's the smoothest part of I-70 to drive on, and sometimes it's a shoulder. So
don't drive on the shoulder. We will not condone that. So do you mind mentioning like the collaborative effort of engineers to work with contractors and CDOT and the planning groups that go into this? It's a lot of work. And as far as engineering is concerned,
sure.
Yeah. How closely have you worked with CDOT on this? And
so what we're doing right now in the development of so the list is done. Okay. And through the effort of what Joe was talking about and the planning went into it, the CDOT list has been developed for the major improvements that need to be done. And certainly engineering and contractors were providing input into how fast it could be done. And that's what we're talking with CDOT about right now, is once this list is finalized and everybody has voted yes on 110 and it's approved, we need to start talking about the development plan and how fast we're going to be able to get these projects built.
Right.
And that is something that we've been talking about, because the one thing we can't do is release all the easy projects up front that all consume one type of material versus the harder ones that consume something else. We need to level this out a bit, and that's one of the things that we as a community have been talking about with them, because one thing we want to do is be very efficient with how this money gets spent, meaning that we want to distribute, and so that the contractors can control the rate that they are completing the work to make it to be done in an efficient manner, so that the engineers and the planners are in the same way as we set these projects up and design them and do the planning that goes into it. All of those things is what we've been doing as a community. And then in cooperation with the community, the citizens in that, it's another conversation about how that gets done. And I don't know, Carla, if you got anything to add to that?
In terms of the citizen involvement?
Sure.
So one of the things that we felt really important to include in this proposal was to make sure that we had a citizens oversight committee. So this isn't just about how citizens have had input into the development of the process through their planning regions and through their elected officials, but we also wanted to make sure that there was a citizens oversight committee after these bonds have been issued to ensure that the agencies and in cooperation with their partners are actually delivering the programs the way they said they were going to.
So you're not just going to leave it in the government's hands.
Yes, we felt pretty strongly that it was important, right, from a legislative perspective as well from a citizen's perspective, to make sure that there was that oversight that existed. And that accountability and the transparency that's necessary. And there will be an ability to track, to my understanding on this process, through the website. Right, so you'll be able to see where your projects are at or where they're moving and how they're proceeding forward.
That's really cool. I like that you can offer that. I did a little bit extra reading on this Citizen Oversight Committee, and so the way you're setting it up is really nice with the 6 members that are appointed by a governor, right? And you've got that split up to who can pick whom, right?
Right. That way you make sure that you're not stacking the deck in any one way or the other, and everyone feels that they've got, from a legislative perspective, because you have members of the House and members of the Senate that will be able to appoint officials onto this committee, as well as the governor being able to do that, with the intent that you're gathering perspective from people who are well versed on transportation, as well as those that are not and can be give a true unbiased perspective into the overall process.
Oh, absolutely. And the other part of that is that you've got a few stipulations here, which I thought were pretty cool. You want a public finance experience, somebody with a certified public accountant, a licensed attorney, a contractor with transportation project experience, a licensed civil engineer, and a transit professional, which I think is very rounded out, and you're getting that perspective, right? You're not just asking somebody who cares about transportation, you're getting professionals within these fields to be able to voice their opinion and help out this committee. And I for one, think that's great. Is there anyone that licensed civil engineer that you guys know that would be gunning for this position, maybe?
I think there would be a lot of people interested in participating.
I think there would be.
Lovely. Do you mind talking a little bit about ACEC, again, that's American Council of Engineering Companies of Colorado's, what's their role in this campaign for project or Proposition 110?
So ACEC's primary role is to really help rally up the troops in the engineering business around getting everybody prepared. There's going to be a lot of engineering firms that will be participating in this. ACEC Colorado represents both engineers in the horizontal and vertical space. And by that I mean the building trades and those. And we have a lot of engineering partners that work in that space. This is primarily for the horizontal engineers and those of us that are working in reconstructing of roads and bridges. So we've been at the table in both the coalition that Carla was talking about earlier that was helping form how this was going to look, was heavily involved in that part of it. There's been discussions about the project delivery. ACEC is playing an important role there as we talk about the timing of how these projects will be done, the state that they're currently in their development, and how that will be done going forward to align with all that. We have engineers that are sitting at the table with CDOT that are doing that. And then it's just then also just helping to spread the word and push the message that we need to support this. This is a good thing for our industry. This is a good thing for the state. And at the end of the day, engineers are really about safety of the public in that, and we see a need for funding so that we can kind of raise the bar a bit on the safety that we are providing out there on our roads and that, because they're deteriorating, and this is something that needs to be done. So I think that's kind of how what we've been doing.
Awesome. So I gotta play devil's advocate here, you guys. I gotta ask you a little bit, because we do know that there is one other technical solution out there that is being presented as well, and that's Proposition 109. And their claim is that they they are not asking for taxes, right? And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about, right? Again, is the tax increase. It's everybody has a negative connotation with that, despite how big or little that increase is overall, right? There's that always a little hesitant. And so 109 doesn't want to do that. What would you say to me if I said, I'm going to vote 109? Change my mind.
I think there are real problems with 109, and part of and there's several. One of them is looking at a revenue stream from the general fund. So as you said, not raising taxes, but taking money out of the general fund. Well, the general fund is this year had a surplus, and with some of that surplus, they were able to share that with transportation. A 1-year dedication of funding to transportation. They are looking at trying to do that potentially into the future to the legislature going forward. With 109, they would do that for 20 years. Well, now we know when times are good, there's surplus in the legislature, but when times are not, with the general fund, I should say, then in order to be able to issue those bonds under 109 and dedicate that money to those projects, you'd be taking money away from other programs. We are not comfortable being able to say we want to take money away from education in order to give it to transportation. We wouldn't take money away from healthcare to give it to transportation. We certainly wouldn't take it away from it. Those are not decisions that we as a coalition are comfortable making. 109 goes straight for it and says, it's okay. Take money away from anything in the general fund and put it towards transportation if that's our highest priority. So one, we're not comfortable with that. The second thing is they also talk about through that bonding that they want to do with the general fund as a revenue stream. They cannot pay for all of the projects they have listed. So 66 projects have been listed associated with 109, and they can only pay for about half of them with the revenue stream that they're proposing. So it is a very difficult situation, I think, for voters when they see that option. Very catchy little phrase, but that little phrase is a misnomer in terms of the ability to actually fund. And then probably the other challenge that we find with 109 is it does not share any money with the cities or the counties or invest within multimodal.
Yeah, that's any thoughts on that? Because I think one of the things that I read was Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers, he supports Fix Our Damn Roads, which it is catchy. I'll give you that. And that's Proposition 109. Because of the state tax increase, so it made me curious about cities and counties outside of the metro area. I feel like a lot of people in the metro area are pretty supportive of 110, but why not out in the other parts of the state? You're getting, what was it, 75%, if not 120% back to your transportation funding in each county.
I talk about this all the time in terms of it's a statewide system,
right?
That we have to maintain, and you have this state system, and you have this local system, and just looking at the state system, I use the example of Lyman. Lyman's 70 miles in any direction from a town that's its size. Population of Lyman is 2,000. And so shall Lyman be responsible for maintaining Interstate 70 35 miles to the east and 35 miles to the west? We have a 2% sales tax, raises about $1.2 million a year. At a 0.62% increase, if we increased our sales tax, $387,000. How far would that go in maintaining I-70?
Not very far, Joe. I know the answer.
Yeah.
About a mile, right?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Yeah. And by the way, there are 4 other state and federal highways that come through Lyman that there's 70 miles is the closest that are. You can't make it a local solution to a statewide problem.
Gotcha. I love that. We have a couple minutes here. Any last thoughts? Anything that you want to make sure you leave with the voters today?
I think just really being able to understand that a support for 110 is really a support into the future, right? It's being responsible for our own systems and being able to take care of them, and it actually allows us to have greater freedoms than what we currently have now. So many of us are constricted by the time we spend in congestion or the limitations that we have on the modal options that may be available to us, whether we can drive a car or whether or not there's a transit system available to us, or whether or not we're living in rural communities where we're not able to get our elderly to health care. So it allows for more freedoms.
Absolutely. And one more time, you need to visit movecolorado.org, and there you will find more information. You'll also find the letsgocolorado.com page if you want to check out that's the actual campaign page for this. And be sure to visit American Council of Engineering Companies of Colorado. That's ACEC. co.org.
ACEC-co.org.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here with me. It's been a pleasure having you on talking transportation on this cold Monday afternoon, but I'm glad we were able to do it. Be sure to check out this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here and vote yes on 110. Thank you so much. Have a great day.